If you often find yourself feeling anxious, drained, maybe overwhelmed, and that you have this tendency to give yourself away to others, whilst you end up feeling extremely worn out at the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of the month, it's more than likely that you are a people pleaser and possibly even a chronic people pleaser, especially when you kind of tend to take care of the needs of others before your own. And we can look at a few reasons why this happens. And one of the reasons that I come up with is that, like, we're always first to lend a hand. And we have this kind of innate kind of feeling that we should rush to help. Whether it's the person who's short $1 at the store, or somebody who like falls off the bus and you're running to pick them up, or if somebody seems like they're in distress, it's almost like it's like we got to go and help. And it's also a simple case that maybe you really don't do that for yourself, that you're maybe the last to lend yourself your own hand when you need it. Also, there may be a big tie into guilt, the guilt of saying no. I know where I grew up and how I grew up and different religious beliefs that, guilt was huge. And this sense of like, it's not okay to say no. And you'll work any other option around not saying no to a point of your own exhaustion. There's also maybe this fear of exclusion and rejection, that if you don't please others, then they will deem you kind of not worthy of their group or their party. And in line with that, then there's this fear of disappointing others. And with all that comes into play this sense of like, maybe you are genuinely a really compassionate and empathic person. And this is something that just comes so naturally to you. And this sense of like loving yourself takes a back seat, but yet you're the first to instill that in others and encourage that in others. So there's also maybe the point where you kind of want to keep the peace, where you want to avoid conflict at all costs. So there's a huge kind of link in with all of this. So this is like the big web of things. And at the center of that web is what's called your autonomic nervous system. Because the majority of what we do as people pleasers is done out of fear. It's done out of fear. And that is heavily connected to a conditioned response from somewhere along the line, which basically means it was a learned response somewhere along the line. You learned that maybe saying no was probably not the best thing to do. Maybe, asking questions, people in authority, and maybe you learned that your needs really didn't really matter. And when we can connect it to our nervous system, then we can understand that our nervous system is always working in service of our survival. So maybe we learned how to survive through pleasing others. And through that survival, what it brought to us was a false sense of safety and connection. And when we work with it through the system behind the scenes, then we can begin to really feel into our people pleasing and understand, are we pleasing from a place of conscious awareness, or are we pleasing out of habit, out of conditioning, out of patterning? Because there's a different feel to it. And it doesn't leave you then feeling anxious and drained and overwhelmed, because you restore that balance between, as I call it, the giving scale. Giving to others and giving to yourself levels out. And it all hinges on this ability to understand how your physiology even begins to change before you rush to please others. Because it's a mobilizing energy that's really powerful. And what makes it even more powerful is the fact that it feels so good. There's like this good feedback system. And hence why there's always this push to like, be kind, to be kind. And it's sense of like, but are you being as kind to yourself? Because that's where the scale ends up totally off. So when we step into the nervous system, like, is there this grip that you sense before you go into action? Or is there a guarding feeling of self-protection? And gently kind of feeling your way through what starts in your physiology that motivates you. Because if you're motivated from a stress response, then it's it's down to conditioning. Because pleasing others from a place that is not activated via the stress response, via the nervous system, again, gives you back way more than you're giving. So you never feel like you're giving from an empty cup. And to be able to sustain your empathy, your empathy cup needs to be full. So you need to be able to give yourself that kindness, give yourself that compassion, give yourself that self-love, to be able to reassure yourself that you don't need to be the first person to be on the scene, to put their hand in their pocket, to mobilize, and that sometimes it's okay for people to like come to you. Step back and let people come to you. And you may notice that some people might fall away. You know, friends, family, they're like going, okay, you're not as pleasing. So there may be a cost to this, but you also have to ask yourself, what is the cost of carrying on through life like this? Because what you're doing is shortening your own life. You're depleting your own energy banks. And there is a balance. There is a balance.